popcorn rice after discussion.
Want to know some more fun facts?
Isn't it awesome to see some of your favorite content creators and favorite people, honestly, that you follow here on this app, be a part of this amazing community called the Nerd Initiative?
The Nerd Initiative presents the Comic Press Podcast, hosted by JJ's Comic Stuff.
Popcorn rice.
Hello. Every time, man. Well, that's all right. What is going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us once again on the Comic Press Podcast. I am your host, JJ, or JJ's Comic Stuff, or Jeremy. Whatever you want to call me is fine with me. And I'm joined once again by my guest. Yeah, I mean, whatever. As long as you're not being insulting, I really don't care. We've also got my co-host here, Michael, once again, Michael Rothman, co-founder of Nerd Initiative, and our special guest today. Please, everybody, say hello to ComicBookStache. What is up, man?
I do like being called special. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We
were
great,
talking
man.
off camera that that stash is special. It is it's everything it was cracked up to be.
You know what? Thank you. I've been trying to keep it as nice as possible. You have no idea the amount of times we've started recording Color Break, and I have to say, give me 1 second. I have to trim it.
Because you can't have it looking, you can't have a trashy stash, man.
Exactly.
Does like food and stuff get stuck in there too? Or
You know what? No, not at all.
See, my dad had like
drinking milk
full-on beard, and that was a constant problem he had.
Before I grew it, I saw people in movies drinking milk, and it would always be a problem.
That's awesome.
So I just don't drink milk.
So good.
Well, we like to start off every episode, man, by trying to get to know the guests a little bit better. And so before we get into any of the nitty-gritty of today's episode, we got to know, what is your nerd origin story, my friend?
Well, let me think. Okay, so I've told this story a million times. And
we've all told our own stories a million times, but hey, it's a new audience, so
I've always told the story of how I got into comic books, which is, to make it long story short, went to New York with my girlfriend. She said, "Hey, you're gonna love this." I said no. She took me to a store, and I walked out. And then she took me again, and I fell in love with it. As a kid, when I think I was 5, probably it's 2002, 2003. My parents were selling their car. It was the first car I ever knew, and I was super sad. I was crying all day. And my dad, to make me feel better, bought me a toy of the Flash. Come to find out, 2 decades later, it's the Reverse Flash. But let's ignore that. I just thought it was a cooler Flash, in yellow. And I don't know. That's just started this I just hooked onto that character. I never really read The Flash or anything. And I vaguely remember watching, Justice League animated show and whatnot. But I don't know. I just started liking them. And then, The Walking Dead was a big part of it. I remember telling my mom, "Hey, I'm super scared to watch this, but people say it's good." And she watched it with me. She got me, I think, the first 12 issues of The Walking Dead in Spanish. They're somewhere in Ecuador, so maybe they're worth.
I was gonna say, because you grew up in Ecuador, you didn't grow up here, did you?
No, I moved here. I moved to the United States 6 years ago, I want to say. So that's been a fun experience. But yeah, somewhere in Ecuador, in one box, there's 12 issues of The Walking Dead, first printing in Spanish, that are not bagged, not boarded.
Wait, you don't have them? Wait, you don't have them?
They're in the storage unit in Ecuador. I could find them next time I go. I just haven't been since I started collecting.
That's cool. Because international comics are huge now. Like I'm seeing them more and more, especially the vintage ones. And I hate to call The Walking Dead vintage, but it's obviously a seminal book, right? It's like a very important book in if you want to call it indie comic history, but in general, just it really is a bit important book. So that's fascinating. That's how you got into it.
It's been at least 10 years since I got him. So, I did like him. I do prefer him in English, funny enough, but, it's whatever. But then
why is that, you think?
I don't know. I always so in Ecuador, you did get movies and all of that. I don't mean to talk trash about Ecuador. I don't want to curse either. So, but my dad would travel a lot and my dad lived here for a portion of time when I was a kid, and he would bring me VHS tapes and just movies in English. So I did grow up listening to English as like my main like movie or TV language,
Okay.
and I don't know, it stuck with me. I just liked it, and I like reading in English. And actually, in Ecuador, to graduate high school, you have to do like this like thesis, and it's like 10 pages. I don't know how long it is, and I did it in English. Like it just felt natural.
Oh.
And they do teach you English over there, but getting the accent was something. When I found out I was moving here, something that I really tried to get down.
I was gonna say, because when you and me first started actually talking and hearing each other, you told me that you were like always battling an accent. I'm like, dude, I
Yeah.
cannot hear it. Like,
No. I mean, yeah, you could fool me. Like when you said 6 years, I was like 6 years.
that's what
Yeah,
I'm
I
saying.
mean-
Like when I first met him, I thought he'd always been here, but like,
No, June 2016 was when I moved here.
Wow,
So
that's
that's
crazy.
crazy. You
What a
picked a
small
hell of a
world, man.
year to move here.
yeah, exactly. I like a month after things started going crazy. But I don't know, man. Growing up, Walking Dead was very important to me. Watching it with my mom every Sunday. It was like a sort of like this religion that we had.
That's so cool.
And then I like going to the Marvel movies. I remember watching the first Avenger, Captain America, with my mom. And my dad also liked the Marvel movies, and he still watches all of them with me. Or at least we'll watch them separately and talk about them. It's like the first thing I do. Just call my dad, like, hey, what'd you think of Ant-Man? And I don't know.
That's
It was,
awesome.
I always felt like an outsider or a nerd, and maybe didn't like fully commit to it until recently, but no shame. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, especially once you get over that, like there's like a stigma, I think, left over from like the 80s and 90s of what a quote unquote nerd is. And then nowadays it's cool to be a nerd, man. So when, once you actually are able to just say screw it and be yourself, it feels so much better.
Yeah, we don't really look like a Peter Parker in like the 50s, or the 60s.
A 45-year-old high school student, Peter Parker in the
with the pocket protectors and all all the rest of it.
No, it's funny. Being a nerd is something that I have always known I've been. I always liked comic book related things, at least video games. I've never been much of a gamer, but I've liked watching people play. Like before YouTube, I watched my cousins play, and I'd just be like, "Mom, buy me this game," and then my cousins would play it, and I'd just be watching them play it. And I did feel like there was this like I don't know, this imposter syndrome, because I don't feel like I dress at least to what people expect me to dress, by being a nerd. But it's every nerd dresses differently,
I was gonna say, I mean, look at Longbox, man. He be showing up in some of his videos in like a straight 3-piece tuxedo. Like
it's fancy.
Always dressed to the nines.
That's if I have the excuse to wear a suit, I will. It's
oh, I know you guys. That was like one of the, because I remember you guys did an episode of Color Break recently. That was the awards show you guys did.
Yeah.
And all three of you had the 3-piece suits on and stuff, or at least the suit jackets.
We didn't need to do it. It was I just wanted to.
That's great. Hey, but it sold the bit, dude.
I don't know. I like dressing up. I like clothes. My brother always makes fun of me if I'm going to like the supermarket. I'll put on like a button up, like a short sleeve, and he's like, "You're gonna buy milk? Come on, man."
So what I want to know is, because obviously, not for people that are international and don't know other languages or vice versa, what doesn't translate in comics? Because obviously, like it's hard with different languages for everything to translate exactly. Is there some kind of weird, funny quirk, when you read comics, whether it's in in a different language that doesn't translate and you kind of makes you giggle, where it's it just doesn't fully compute 100%?
I can't really like talk about. I mean, I can give you like short answer. There's not one Spanish, most comics are written here in the U.S., so there's like a somewhat unified language. But go to Mexico, go to Ecuador, Colombia, they're different languages entirely. So what they do for most children's TV and books There's two things they can do. They can either go for like Spain Spanish, or they can go for some of this centralized Latino Spanish that I like to call it. So it's sometimes there's words that I will never say. It's just like that word doesn't exist in my vocabulary. And when I hear it, it makes sense. Like I know what they're talking about, but in my brain, I don't use it. And movies, I mean, I studied film, and there's something so weird about watching someone speak and then their voice just doesn't match the movement of their lips.
So weird.
Weird. There's some places.
So
like
you're
animated,
a dub guy, not a sub guy.
Depends. Animated things I can watch them dubbed over because
it's not as accurate anyway.
Yeah,
But
like,
if
for
you're
example,
watching like a foreign film or something, you
Yes.
don't like the dubbed
no, I'll watch.
version of it.
I'll watch
You'd
it with
rather.
subtitles.
Okay.
I would say like a good example is for me Shrek, and there's like a I don't know if it's a hot like take, but Shrek in Spanish to me is way better than Shrek in
Really?
English. I just really love Shrek in Spanish.
That's cool.
Huh.
Shrek,
I'll have
SpongeBob,
to
and the
look it up
Simpsons.
and watch it in Spanish
cool.
just
That's
to
cool.
see what you're talking about.
I'll die on that hill.
Was Squid Game dubbed or was there subtitles? I can't remember.
No,
'Cause
that was subtitled.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I would rather a subtitle where they're speaking in the native language, and because the dubbed, I mean, and Netflix is leaning into this now, where with this dubbing, and it kills me. Like if it's a good enough show, like again, like Squid Game, obviously a phenomenon, right? And everyone's watching it, and once you get into it, you're reading it, and it makes sense. The story, the story translates, right? Like the gist of the story, and so if it's a good story, it's a good story. But when they dub it and they put and there's one I think now that's on Netflix that I couldn't get through that it has different languages. So some of them are dubbed, some are not dubbed. It's like an international show, and so it's this German / American / British, and it's.
Did they just not want to pay for making different versions of it, or
I think that was the whole point, was to kind of have this unified international thing. But the fact that they dubbed dubbed some people, and it's the classic kung fu movies where it doesn't match up,
where it's never
100%.
even good dubbing at all either.
Yeah.
Like
the
you can
emotion
tell the actors
is,
had no clue what they were actually saying.
Well, what I can say about Shrek, just not to talk about Shrek that much, is that it's one of the only movies where they're actually they grab comedians who they were like, hey, we want you to do the voice of Eugenio Derbez was the actor who did Donkey, and he was like, hey, I want to write my own jokes into it because some jokes just don't translate to a Latino audience, and they were like, yeah, go ahead, and that makes it a little bit better.
Okay,
that's cool.
And then as far as I do want to say anime. I don't watch a lot of anime. If I've watched 2, that's too much. Nothing against it. I think it's great, actually. I really enjoyed the ones I've watched. I just haven't really committed to watching a lot of it. Sometimes when I'm watching TV, I like to multitask. I'll be reading comic books and watching TV, which maybe isn't smart, but it's a thing I've done. And I can't watch it with subtitles if I'm cleaning my room and have to look at the screen the whole time.
Right. Doesn't make for good background noise.
TV is this comfort thing that I do it to escape sometimes doing mundane tasks. So I can't put 100% of my focus into it a lot of the times,
Right.
Plus, it's the ADD culture that we live in. So I think we all, to some degree, we all have it, and we all want to do.
I'll be sitting here getting ready for a podcast, and I've got Star Trek playing on one screen. I've got Discord up on another screen. I've got this going. It's nonstop, man.
Oh, I like
of it.
I like to make the thumbnails for my podcast the day off, the day of release. I'll make the thumbnail on my phone. There was this app, it was called Photoshop Mix, and it's not on the App Store anymore, but I never deleted it from my phone. So I'll be working, taking calls, and just making thumbnails. I don't know why my brain it works like that.
Hey, if it works, it works, man. That's
not
what
alone,
matters at the end of the day.
You're not alone, my friend. It's all of us these days. We can never.
That's why I try to start planning the next episode of this right after the previous episode ends, so I've got like a week ahead of time on it.
That you know what? It's I don't know about you guys, but when you plan out things in advance, it's super stressful. Because like for example, me and Cody were talking today, and I'm not gonna say names, but we were planning on who should we have on the pod? Started like pitching names, and it's like, oh, this person agreed to do it. This one would be good. And then I'm thinking like, for example, we're all going to C2E2. I don't think it's a secret. I know me and Cody plan to record an episode there, like set up like in a closet. I don't know where, just this isolated space, record it. So I already know that's going to come out April 7th. So if Kevin Smith is like, hey, I'll be on your podcast, I'm already like, oh no. So it has to be April 21st for him to be on it. It's too complicated.
Yeah.
Planning ahead never
Google
works.
Calendar is my best friend. I'll tell you that right now.
No, I keep it all here. That's the dangerous part.
I couldn't do it, man. There's no way I could do that.
You want to hear the craziest thing? And then I'll stop. I'm old enough to remember when like Wi-Fi and internet and smartphones weren't always prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
So I have distant memories of like, I wouldn't say working because I wasn't that old, but like whether it's school or whatever, leaving a place and going home and not having internet or email for like the cycle until the next day of going to work. So like not consistently checking my phone, having, I mean, it takes it back to the ADD culture, but not having that access. And I mean, I hate to say the cliche thing, but man, it was a simpler time. Like
it really was though. Cause I can still remember those days. And like, cause I grew up like right at the tail end of that. And it's like, it was way slower paced back then.
I was born in 98, but first phone didn't even have color on the screen. It was green and darker green, so I do remember those like simpler times. I would say like in my teens, we started like more into like instant messaging and just texting people, but there was a big portion of my formative years where it was just like I could play games on my computer, but I wasn't on YouTube all the time.
Right, exactly.
I remember the first time I went on YouTube.
So can I. It's crazy, man. So there's really no good way to segue from that into this, but our next topic here is the question we asked of people online as well. Single issues, trades, or omnis. What is your preference, guys? And why? Because a lot of people have a lot of different answers to this. I picked out a few that I'll show here in a minute.
Yeah, I brought examples. I don't know if you guys want me to start or you guys want to start, but
I mean, that's great because I actually was going to ask like, clear, single issues, and I think omnibuses are pretty prevalent. What's the difference between a single issue and a trade? Like, what's?
I was gonna say, I promise he's got some. I can show some.
We got issue number 1 of Blue Book over here by James Tynion IV, which I haven't read, but it's aliens and I love it.
And then here, I've got volume 5 of Something is Killing the Children, which is 5 single issues in one book.
Yeah, so that's the trade. There's around 28 pages for the single issue. I would say is like the standard. Then we have trades. I have Enter the Blue by Dave Chisholm. Amazing book. It's about jazz. If you like jazz,
that's cool.
Then there's this weird
the mask
that's called an omnibus, but it's a trade that mainly indie comic books do. I would say there's like 2 trades in one. Then we have oversized hardcover, which is this is the same as a trade. They just made it bigger and they made it hardcover.
And they made it a hardcover so they can charge you an extra $3.
Exactly. And then we have
Killing Joke, so it's probably like the 45th reprint because they're trying to continue to keep that going.
And then you've got that which they also call an omnibus or a collected edition or a compendium or they've got a bunch of different names. That's why I kind of tried to keep it to the 3 names.
That is dope.
Single issues.
This is what 1,000 pages. Right. Wow. I think this was
that's what I consider an omnibus. That is what I could like a full big collected edition.
Yeah, because there's books that like are big collected editions, like for example, Strange Adventures. Great book, and it's a collected edition, but it still feels like an easy read. Like you can read it in one sitting, and it's not gonna fry your brain.
Right. It doesn't feel like an omni. It feels like just a nice big trade. Like
I mean,
So what's your main preference there? stash?
The one I buy the most is single issues. Because I grew up with the idea of comic books are single issues. That's sort of what you see in media, what you see in real life, even. So if I'm looking for, like, for example, I'm trying to complete my Spider-Ham collection. I have a trade that has every single Spider-Ham issue. So I'm good.
But you want all the singles.
I want all the singles. There's something special about being like, I own this one. And it's not the money, because like people can be like, oh, Secret Wars #8 is this special book that's $1,000. I don't care about how much it's worth. I have like 3 copies of Spider-Man 2099, the first issue.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, those can be worth something, but like, am I really gonna sell them?
Yeah.
So I started my collection with just single issues. That's what I decided. This is what I want to do. Someone gave me a trade, and I was like, actually, this is not that bad. This is not the worst thing ever. So I started buying trades a lot, and I enjoy them. It's a quick read. If I'm going to work, I have an hour lunch break. I can read a trade. I can finish a trade in that 1 hour. I know that for sure. And omnis are like my latest addiction. I only have 3, so it's not the worst thing ever. But it's so nice just to be like, oh, I had the whole story.
Yeah.
And see, like I like single issues are probably my favorite because those are I can keep up with everything as it's coming out.
Yes, 100%.
But if it's not something I'm worried about keeping up with in real time, I'll wait for the trades.
I would
because
say
the trades I'm saving a couple of bucks by getting 5 to 7 issues in one book. So I'm saving a little bit of money on that front. And then also I don't have the shelf space or the expendable income for those big, huge omnis because those things aren't cheap. They can range anywhere from like 60 to 70 bucks all the way up to like 400.
Yeah.
Like they get pricey.
The Chris Claremont omnibus of like X-Men, like his original run is like well over $100 because I had it and then I sold it because I was like, I got through it. And
especially if you could get a hold of something that they don't print very often. Like Nightwing Year One is one of the hardest things to find in my area. I can't find it. It's just not there.
Well, for those who don't know, like some omnibuses, not some, a lot, they go in and out of print too. So they're not always in
and
print,
some are printed more often than others too.
I
like
know
the big popular ones, they'll print pretty frequently, but the ones that are like quote unquote cult classics, those ones you're going to be like waiting a long time for it to reprint and you're going to be paying a pretty penny when it does finally reprint.
Ultimate Spider-Man, you're going to be battling that one. You'll get it. I know it. I bought it probably 3 months ago and it's out of print right now. It's in back order at least. It's coming back in April, I think. And it's such a great book. So I'll say it like this. I don't have a favorite. I love, to me, when I think of comics, I think of single issues. I can say that much. And if you want to keep up with stories monthly, that's it. You don't need to buy more. But if you're a new reader, which I am, and you hear a lot about like, hey man, Jeff Johns, he wrote The Flash and he killed it. It's gonna be a fortune to buy.
Trying to find all those single issues. Yes, that's one thing I've noticed. A lot of like newer collectors run into that problem when they first start because they don't know that these are the same thing as the single issues. They think it's a different story or something sometimes, which is something I thought at first too when I first started getting into stuff.
Well, it's all confusing, and then you have variant covers,
and then you have variant covers, and then like we've gone into the issue with my issue with DC trying to find their trades and collected editions is they'll label things the story arc. They won't label it by what run it's from.
Now, so you'll have
if you're
like
trying to find different, if you're trying to find a complete run of like the current Batman run, you have to start at like Rebirth, and then it changes into like something else, and then it goes into Joker War, and then it goes into Fear State, and then it goes into Future State, and none of it says Batman Volume whatever the heck. You know what I'm saying? It's all just Batman Joker Wars, and so to a new reader, they don't even know those are all part of the same run.
Yeah, it's complicated. Like for example, I'm trying to get into Superman right now. Like as we speak,
That's another one that's hard to get into.
I have it right
here.
They
label everything.
Like I just haven't found the right book, and I can show you right here. I open my phone. I'm looking at an Omni. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm looking at a Superman Omni by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason.
Oh, I've read
convenient.
a little bit of that run. It's really good.
It's so convenient to just be like, yeah, I cannot find like maybe a storyline that's like, I can be like, oh, it starts here, ends here. But at least I know like, hey, people like those writers. Maybe I'll jump on in the first issue, because there's like 40 issues, let's say, inside the book. The first issue I'll be like confused. But then that's what I'll say. Like if you want to jump into something and maybe it's confusing at first, just keep reading it. You'll catch up.
Eventually it will make sense.
Well, that's something that they need to do as well. Is like there should be like an essential omnibus collection that you should, again, and there's ones that are in and out of print, but it is tough. Like if you want to get into Spider-Man or you wanted to get, Superman. I mean, you're talking about
80 years.
Yeah, like where do you even begin and what do you do? Like there's so many different
what's
errors.
Current continuity and what's not. How's a new reader supposed to understand all of that with the crisis events and what's Earth 1, what's Earth 2, what's Earth whatever. Like, dude, DC is, and Marvel's really not much better about it, but at least they're a little bit better with how they label their books.
Yes, 100%. I mean, for me,
you know which run of Spider-Man you're buying. If you go to buy a trade of Spider-Man, it says so right on the back. It tells you exactly what issues are in it and tells you what volume it's from.
I will always say, for someone who wants, like, there's classic Spider-Man stories. You'll have Kraven's Last Hunt, where you'll be like, oh, this is something that I know I have to read.
Yeah,
people love it, and you can just buy that. You can buy the trade, whatever. For me, Ultimate Spider-Man it's a reimagined, from the origin. You get from when he gets bit.
Yeah.
And it's, the Omni.
That's why I recommend that one particularly to a lot of new Spider-Man readers.
Yeah.
Because yes, it's not main continuity, quote unquote, Spider-Man. No. But if you want a very good Spider-Man story that'll give you a very good understanding of the character, Ultimate Spider-Man is where it's at. You can read it from 100%. Beginning to end, and you'll know exactly what's happening throughout the entire thing.
Because the thing is, for example, for people who don't know, the Green Goblin is like a monster with wings, and sort of what you saw in Into the Spider-Verse. That version of the Green Goblin.
it's Ultimate Spider-Man is definitely an alternate universe as far as Marvel goes, because they change all kinds of things about the story.
Peter Parker is Peter Parker. That's what I'll say. The essence of who Peter Parker is, that's that book. I remember my best friend, honestly, and I don't know, like YouTube channels sometimes make a full reading order. I remember, I think Near Mint Condition did a Batman reading order, which I was like, thank God, because it's such a long history that you can at least be like, okay, this makes sense. And maybe you won't buy an order because maybe you'll hear someone say like, hey, the Snyder Omni is really good. It's complicated because people's brains tells them like, oh, you have to read it in order. That's where my brain goes for anything. It's like, oh, it's a full story. It's like I wouldn't watch a movie from the 31st minute.
Oh, it's like when you go to a comic store, I'm not one of those, like, if I can find issue 1 of something and then issue 4 of something, I will not read any of that run, even if I have the whole rest of the run until I find issue 2 and 3.
100%.
That's interesting.
Because it'll bug me because I don't know what happened in those issues. So I know
100%.
there's plot points. I don't know what's going on.
I forgot who the writer was, but there was a guy who wrote a book. And he didn't read all the extended crossovers and stuff, but he basically read 10,000 Marvel comics. And he read them actually by single issues, which is crazy. I think it took him like, I don't know how many years to do it. I don't know what who knows? I think he went to libraries too and he did all this stuff, and he wrote a book that basically helps you plot where to enter, like each run. And he was like saying, he's like, yeah, he does not recommend going in order because he does think that you're going to get bored. And I know for a fact I've read Amazing Spider-Man 1 through 30. And it is awful. It is. I said before, the first 5 issues are in the first like 10 issues are really bad. Like the storylines are rough. Like it's classic.
And they're very, very wordy.
Yeah.
And very
old
dated.
Spider-Man is like,
and
this much text taking up half the frames.
Fights are over in one scene, like a little kick and he's done and is out. Like it's really crazy. And he talks about Fantastic Four is a good example. And I was talking to someone this week about it. The reason Fantastic Four 5 is so tough to get, and you talk about the Doom cover, it is Doom, but compared to like Fantastic Four 1 through 4 is really rough. They don't have costumes for a couple of issues. They're fine, you know, and 5 is where it all starts to kind of come together with that run. So it's tough. You have to, it is tough, especially the older books. And then again, like you said, like there's different writers and different artists and different, there really should be a guide on this of how to help.
And I will say, there's a lot of paid some runs that I'll end up liking.
Yeah.
So I just honestly, even if, hey, sometimes you'll look at the cover and just like it doesn't matter. Just go buy it. You know?
Yeah. Oh, that's
if
what
the
I
cover
tell
is
people
cool
all the time. Like if you are attracted to something by the cover, grab it.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people talk about, you know, oh, I started buying comic books because I saw this one cover and I thought it was great. And maybe that's the worst issue of that run.
But it was the first issue that got them into the hobby.
Exactly.
And that's what matters. And that one bad issue they will remember for the rest of their life as a good memory because it got them into something better.
I can tell you the first single issue I ever bought was Spider-Ham #1 by Seb Wells. So, I don't know how I don't know what people think of that run. I personally, like, in my head, it's the best thing ever. Not because it's
I haven't met many people who don't like Spider-Ham.
It's tough.
It's not an easy one to get into, though, because it's you can't go into it expecting this serious story, which some people do, you know.
And those people, I just like, those are the same people that are like, this movie isn't realistic. It's a movie. Of course, it's not realistic. It's a movie.
I just imagine that if I'm reading that, I'm gonna hear John Mulaney's voice in my head as Spider-Ham's talking. So I actually don't mind that, to be honest. But
so, Michael, I take it you're a single issue guy, though.
I'm definitely single issue. I mean, I'm also vintage, right? So for me, it's so daunting, like to get into some of the new runs and new arcs and things going on. And I'm, you know, obviously I have a pretty vast, you know, vintage collection, but I do want to get into some of the newer runs. But yeah, you gotta find what vibes with you. And I think it's different for everybody, and it's definitely not one size fits all. Omnibus, I will say omnibuses are tough for me because I'm just too ADD. I'll read for a little bit and then I stop. And that's
right. That's why, like, a nice, you know, 5-6 issues, I could sit through that in like 1 or 2 sittings and like, okay, that's done. I can move to the next one now.
I don't worry. I have 2 ways of doing things. For an Omni, either I start reading it, stop, start, stop, or what happened with Ultimate Spider-Man was I picked it up and for 4 hours I just sat there like an idiot.
That's awesome.
See, that can happen too, but those are great because, dude, that's how you know you're getting sucked into something. If you can sit there for 4 hours and not even realize it, bro, you know it's good. Yeah,
it's I don't know. I just to put it there, I don't think there's a real answer to what do you prefer. I like all of them. Whatever gets the story in my hands, I'll take it.
100%. Because then we got Rome's Guide here from TikTok. He said, omnibus all the way. You don't have to hunt down all those trades or singles you're missing. Plus, long boxes are a hassle and cheaper in the long run.
Honestly, the way I will say, and this is my me advocating for omnis, even though I only have 3. If you want to buy the trades, once you like think about it, if you bought all of them, you spend more than you would have spent on an Omni.
True, but the counter to that is that trades are easier to find sometimes than the Omnis. Because a shop will order 10 or 12 copies of a trade. They'll only order 1 Omni.
Oh yeah, Omnis are for me a strictly online thing.
Yeah,
I will.
Yeah,
that's one thing the apps are great for because you can sit there and start at any run and just read it all the way through.
No, and for me, like go on any website that really like sells omnis, like dedicates to selling them, they'll discounts, and it's honestly the best thing you can do.
In stock trades, you got cheap graphic novels,
organic price
books. There's a whole bunch of sites that
you can pay them off
really
in some
good
of them
prices. Yeah, they'll do layaway plans on stuff.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword because you'll be like, oh, I'll pay it off, but you're paying off $5.
Yeah.
Like you just maxed out a small credit card or something.
And by the time you're done reading the first one, you're already buying the next one.
Right. And we've got Cody Collects, who was their previous guest, and Comic Book Stash's co-host, says generally prefers Omnis, but he does like the deluxe editions as well. So that's that's where the definition of what an Omni and what a deluxe edition comes in. Do you consider a big thick boy to be an omnibus, or do you consider that to be a deluxe edition?
I don't know. I just read the cover. Whatever it says there, I stick with it.
And then our buddy Hillbilly Comics, he just said yes when asked this question.
That's great.
That's
I think he was saying yes to you saying big thick boy. He just was he appreciated
that. For me, I when I was told like this is the topic, I was like, great, single issues, 100%. And then
you started thinking about it.
I was driving home from work right before I sat here, and I was thinking I should grab one of each and just look at it and think. And I don't have an answer, man. I don't know if that's the boring thing to say. They're all great. It depends.
Yeah.
It depends on what you can afford.
Yeah, because I mean, I talk about the trades are easy to find. You save money on not buying so many single issues, and then I've got this just sitting. This is just my to be read pile that's next to me. I've got like 4 other to be read piles that I haven't even dug into yet.
Yeah, I will say this is a thing I found out recently. Image Comics, if you buy their volume 1s, like their trades, most of them, I don't want to say all of them because The Walking Dead
exactly what you're about to say.
This. They're $10. The first volume is $10. The Walking Dead
second volume, they get you.
That's like 15. The Walking Dead is the one where like I don't know why The Walking Dead is not $10 for the first trade. If you want to get a story for people to buy, that's the one you have to push.
Yeah. I think it's because it's the one that they know is going to sell. It doesn't matter what price point they put it at because fans of The Walking Dead are gonna want it.
They don't need to draw you in to lock you.
Yeah, not with that one. That one's too big. That's like Spawn. They don't need to try hard with Spawn. Spawn fans are gonna buy Spawn.
But
what is there, 1 million copies out there of Spawn? I think
they're in the 300 and something now in the main line.
I think it's the longest running indie comic.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
And it never had a spin-off series until recently. Now they've got the King Spawn, they got the Gunslinger Spawn, they've got Scorched, they've got a couple different runs off of it now.
I don't know much about Spawn. I just know some people love it, some people hate it. And the people that hate it really hate it.
I have noticed that. Like people who don't like Spawn really don't like Spawn. But they've also read probably all of it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like if you love it or hate it, if you've read Spawn, you've read all of it. And I'm guilty of that. I've read like the first 200 something issues of it.
Oh, I could not.
That's insane. It is a task to get through. I love Todd McFarlane's art, man. But his writing is, dude, I love you, Todd McFarlane. I apologize for this in advance. But, dude, early Spawn is hard to read sometimes just because it's just the most plodding along. It's like trudging through mud. Trying to read early Spawn.
The early days of Image is like a very, very funny like story because when they brought all those people over from Marvel, the Jim Lee, McFarlane, who else? Silvestri came too, and like whoever else, dude, or Liefeld. Dude, those guys were artists. They weren't the writers.
That's the funniest thing.
So they'll even admit now. I mean, I was watching one documentary. I think it's speaking of Walking Dead. I think it was Kirkman's History of Comics or whatever on Amazon. It's a great one, and he talks about. And so they interview them, and Liefeld will admit he's like, dude, we were the worst writers ever. It was all about the art. He's like, and we had the clunkiest storylines. And if you go back and read those like first few years, it makes no sense.
But the artwork was phenomenal.
Yeah, no, the artwork's great. They had the best in the business. But I have this. I don't remember who drew it, and it's not early images. Like the first 10 years, I would say, or first like 5. There's this book called Union, and it's like the art is out of this world. The art in Union is so good, but I struggled so much reading it, and it's only like 5 issues. But I was like, I committed to this. I'll finish it, and now I look back at it fondly. I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't know if anyone knows that book other than me, and I get why they don't know it.
But now it's one of those things where you hear somebody bring it up and you can be like, oh, I know what you're talking about. I love having stuff like that, like obscure, random, useless knowledge that actually comes in handy in a random conversation one day.
Well, that's like the fun part of it, is like when you know something, and also when you know something and someone else, you can connect on it and they're like, I do remember that. Like that's,
I don't know, man. It's funny because that's how my brain works for the most part. Like, I just remember random bits of information and they just stick then. Like, that's how my brain works. Like, people will be like, yeah, Queen Elizabeth II. And I'll be like, oh, I'm born in 1926.
See, that's how I was. Like, I was always a history buff in school. So, like, history facts stuck in my head, like, really easy. So, once I read something a couple times or see a documentary about it, I remember it forever.
To me, and it's funny, if I try to remember some things, I'll forget them immediately. But things stick, man. Like, the things that I don't want to have in my brain always stay there.
That's how it goes, right?
In art history in college, I think it was my first semester. It's been some time, but they were my professor as a joke was like, hey, if anyone can tell me what this Egyptian word means, you get an A on this test. And he was like, oh, Namer. And my brain, it was like, just remember like sitting down next to my dad watching an alien documentary about Egypt and being like, oh my god, fish chisel, 100%, I know this.
awesome.
And the professor was like, no one was
I don't know
supposed to
how
get
the
that.
hell you know that, but
I wish I didn't, because that's the thing. Like, people will be like, hey, what you think of the Visions, the book? And I'll be like, I read it last week, but I
can't remember any of it. That's that short-term memory loss. Well, speaking of short-term, we're almost into March, so I think it would be a good moment to go over the most anticipated, at least our most anticipated comic books coming out next month. So why don't you start off with one, comic book stash? I know you sent me your list of 3.
I want to tell you, first of all, great segue. I don't know how you pulled that one off, but
yeah, so smooth.
You got it.
I don't feel like it was that smooth, but hey, if you guys say it was, we'll go with that.
People really think about it, I was like, you said it, I was like, February is 28 days shortest month. You got it.
I find my ways, man.
I guess I'll do Batman 133 by Chip Zdarsky. Man, what a run he's had.
Man, what a huge team on this.
Yeah.
I will say,
Zdarsky writing, Miguel Mendoza, like, oh my goodness, so many people on one book.
Nothing against the current artist, but Jorge Jimenez started, doing the art for this run, and I do miss it. The art right now is fantastic. But there's something about that Jorge Jimenez writing. I know he just went viral with a tweet about how he drew, Bruce Wayne, but God, I know he's coming back soon to it. He took like a mini break. But that run is so good. I do think it'll become like a modern classic. The failsafe arc was incredible.
I was gonna say, for people who haven't read that arc, why don't you give us like a really quick rundown on what like the major plot point is?
It starts with someone frames Batman for murder. I'm not gonna say who. And Batman had devised a robot to kill him if he ever killed someone.
Hence, failsafe.
Yeah. So the thing is, Batman knows everyone's weakness. Batman knows how to basically kill anyone in the Justice League. and he designed a robot that could kill him.
If you think about it, that makes sense though, because if he can take out everybody, I mean, including Superman, then that technically makes Batman the most dangerous person on Earth.
Yeah, no, 100%. But that makes Failsafe the most dangerous weapon ever created.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess my question would be, is this the first time Batman's been framed for murder? Because it doesn't feel like it would be.
No, but they don't really go into it, man.
I know. I'm just saying. I just think
No, it's hey, listen. There's some
I broke
crazy
the continuity there.
like
with that
bananas things that happen in this like what is it like? It's like 8 issues by now in this like run by Chips and Archie. There's some crazy things that happen. I mean, Batman survives some things that would make me question if he has powers or not.
Yeah,
but
especially in Fear State.
Yeah,
During
what
that
a
whole
run!
story.
I don't know, there's nothing specifically interesting about issue 133. I'll tell you that much.
It's just the next the run you've really been enjoying. Like, hey, that's an anticipated book in my book. Shoot,
I've been having this issue where like I'll buy a bunch of books and not read them. But I can tell you the one book that I will for sure read, sometimes in my car outside of my LCS, is Batman.
Hey, if you gotta know, you gotta know right then, right?
Yeah, it's
I've been reading. I've read stuff in line on my way up to the counter before. Like, the dude looked at me like, "You want to buy it now? You just read it." I'm like, "Yeah, I still want to buy it. I just read it. I consumed the media. Now I owe you money." Like,
yeah, no, my friend. I have a friend at work who now, I basically forced him into being a TikToker. It was funny, but his name is Euro's Gift on TikTok. He would. We buy the same books. So I know that for sure. If we buy a Batman the next day at work, it's
yeah.
Did you read it? Did you read it?
That's cool though. You actually have somebody in real life to like sit down and like chop it up with about comics though, because a lot of us don't. Like a lot of us like this is our outlet.
It's good. I knew he liked superheroes, so I really just basically was like, "Hey, have you ever read a comic book?" He was like, "Yeah, online," and I was like, "Happy birthday!"
Hey, there you go. That's a good way to start a friendship right there, man.
Yeah, no, he's one of my closest friends right now. He might be watching this. I didn't want him to know that, but appreciate him a lot.
That's awesome.
But yeah, Batman, man. I don't know. Detective Comics is also really good, but Batman for me right now is really doing it.
Heck yeah. So you know me, I like to give people new number ones to read every month when I do these. So my first one is actually a DC book. For me, that's very rare that I recommend a DC book or anticipate a DC book, but Superman Lost looks like it's going to be really cool.
That cover is
you know what?
Really, really nice.
Isn't it though? I mean, here, I'll bring the slide back up. I mean, that cover is
epic.
Drew my attention to it.
It looks so good.
Begging for a remark, man. And all around Superman, it is begging for a signature and a remark.
It looks so good. In fact, that I'm putting it on my pull list right now.
See, that's how that's how it was for me. As soon as I saw the cover, I'm like,
yeah,
he's lost, and the cover shows him in space. That looks like something that's probably cool. And if
I've
you
heard
want
about it.
I was going to say, if you want the brief synopsis that I was able to find online, basically they're calling this Superman's Odyssey of Solitude. After Superman is called away on a routine Justice League mission, Lois Lane awakens to find a complete stranger standing in her living room. The Man of Steel, home much sooner than expected, reveals he has in fact been lost in space for 20 years. So it just goes from there. It's like, what?
I'm gonna read it.
Right. I mean, how can that not sound interesting to somebody?
Thank you. I just told you I wanted to get into Superman, and here you go.
Ask and you shall receive.
Dude, that's a great way to get into it too. I think. I remember from the '90s, it was that new Spider-Man McFarlane run that got me into Spider-Man a little bit.
That cover is iconic.
Yeah. It's just. And that's another one. There's like 1 million copies out there. Like,
I have at least 2 different ones.
silver, they got the gold, they got the, you know, it's
I have the black one with.
This Superman Lost has probably got, I think, like 14 different variant covers.
You know, and I know this is not the topic. I'm a cover A kind of guy.
I am too, unless it's a particular artist or a really, really cool looking cover. Like it's got to be really special looking for me to want it, or it's got to be by a particular artist. If it's a Momoko cover, y'all know. I've got a whole short box full of Momoko. Like I buy almost every cover that comes out from her.
If you throw me like a shiny like cover, I'm a simple man. You know, you
I
throw
like
me
shiny
something
stuff
shiny,
too, man. Foil covers is a weakness of mine.
For
100%.
Action Comics 1050, there was a foil cover that I
got it over here in a pile.
It's
so
good.
pretty.
And then if Alex Ross does anything, I know he doesn't do a lot of variants, but if Alex Ross is in anything, I have to buy it.
Have you seen his villain variants? That might be a topic for the next podcast because they'll start coming out by then, I think.
Yes, I don't know. It's Alex Ross could just put out anything, and I'd be like,
I liked what Ken brought up too with No One #1 from Image. I mean, man, we are getting creative these days with a companion podcast. Patton Oswalt and Rachel Lee Cook. I mean,
that's awesome though. That is how you draw in more people. You make it as real as you can without being hokey about it. And how they're doing with the tying in that podcast with that. They're tying in the Scott Lang book that's coming out with the movies. Like, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the on YouTube, there's this documentary about when I think it was Dark Knight came out. They did a bunch of like a Comic-Con and everything. They did a bunch of like, oh, the Joker sent out a message, you know, like it was just this like crowd of people like looking for clues at Comic-Con, and it's like probably like an hour where there's like multiple episodes, but it gets people going.
Yeah,
it's interactive. Interactive makes it better 100%.
100%.
It's like X-Men right now. X-Men does like their like, you know, you can vote for who becomes a member of the team, I believe.
That's cool.
People eat that up, and I get it because that's me.
DC did it for if they were going to do Superboy or Green Lantern or a whole bunch of other stuff this past year. So.
Oh, and after the Batman came out, remember that whole like everyone was on the edge of their seat with the whole the Riddler with his ongoing riddles, and it was what was it? I can't remember the website. What was the website? And we had to keep going back to it, and there eventually we finally got that, you know, that Joker deleted scene or whatever was basically what was released at the very end of it. But man, I remember solving those riddles, trying to figure this out, and
it's fun. It's just more nerdy stuff for nerds. Like, you gotta love it.
My friend Sarah, which I think you know her, JJ. I'm Loki Dumb. She loves Batman. I actually
real quick shout out to I'm Low-Key Dumb, because I would not know how to operate OBS without her. I would not know how to operate a podcast without her. I would not know how to do half the crap I do without I'm Low-Key Dumb. And it took her 20 minutes to teach me all that crap. So she is a beast. She is awesome.
No, she loves the Batman, and one of the things I wanted to watch that movie with her because I know how much Batman means to her. And God, what an experience. And I remember just being at work and she would send me like, hey, the new riddle came out. And I would tell my manager, I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And
finding somebody who loves stuff that much and gets that excited about stuff, that just makes it more fun for you too. Like,
no, I mean, not only is it an interactive experience, but like it wasn't easy to solve. Let's be honest.
No. It was really hard to solve. Like I remember writing down there was like an answer key, and you had it was a pain in the butt, man. It wasn't.
But having a friend there to do it with me, although she did most of it, I'm not gonna take any.
But what's your next pick for March, man?
Oh, my next pick for March.
Yeah, we both still got 2 more to go. We keep getting sidetracked, but I don't care. This is fun. This is good. You know, this is the perk of live podcasting.
Unstoppable Doom Patrol #1.
The one with the long name. Yes. I got one with a long name too, though, so don't feel bad.
I'm watching the show, which Doom Patrol is a fantastic show. I mean,
I have not watched enough of it. I've only watched like 1 or 2 episodes.
It's so odd, but it's so good. I mean, I love everyone in that show is just out of this world, and you know, it's okay. I know some people, Grant Morrison, they wrote a portion of the book. Gerard Way wrote, another run, and it's just always been something that's been on my mind. Like, I like the show, and I like I like very silly things. That's why I like Spider-Ham. That's why I like Captain Carrot. I just they call to me. I don't think everything should be that serious.
100%.
So
Well, it's called comic books, comics.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I mean, it came from the funny papers, right? Like that's where all this originated from. So
I was gonna
go
say I
ahead.
was doing research after Ant-Man, and I don't know how I got into this. I started to look into how did I get into this? I was looking at, I think it was like a Marvel history book or something I was looking into, and it was, God, I forgot what it was. Like 34 was the first guy who basically put the funny pages into a book, and he was like the father of comic books, and going through all that, and then like Timely, and then DC, and it's fascinating. I love history. I think it's
because the Shadow
fascinating.
was one of the first characters to get his own full like actual comic book because he started as a radio thing, and then he moved into getting his own Pulp Fiction novels, and then he was in the comic books, and he's still around. Like they still throw him into stories now and then.
It's people should look more into those things. Like, for example, Spider-Ham is a character that like you can know the basic gist of it. It's a pig. Well, it's a spider, gets bit by a pig, becomes Spider-Ham. But the story of it, I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about it. I will be making a video about it. And if anyone wants to steal that idea, they'll have to fight me and probably they'll win. But I do want to make a video about that. I don't know. It's just so interesting to me. Like, it's still a very serious book, and you can tell the people who made it, like, but
actually
everything
cared about it. Yeah, but
and Doom Patrol hits that same part of my brain where I'm like, this is stupid, but it's so good.
Yeah.
And I'm even looking into buying the Grant Morrison omnibus for Doom Patrol. I don't know. That team just calls my name.
Well,
make
it's
anything
issue
stupid
number
enough.
1 too, so it's a good spot to jump in and try and catch up on a series.
Yeah, any comic book writer out there, if you make something stupid enough, I will put my money on
it. It's a request for proposal. Let me know what you're gonna put some up with. We're gonna do this.
All right, so for my second pick, I've got my indie book obsession never ends. We've got 7 Years in Darkness #1 by, I'm gonna probably butcher this last name, Joseph Schmalke. But yeah, so basically the synopsis I got on this one was it comes out on the 29th of March, so like all the way near the end of the month. But it's the Academy of Black Magic has reopened its doors for the first time in 200 years. 72 children will walk through the academy doors for freshman year, but only 7 are able to graduate and walk out alive.
Damn.
So they're calling it a 7-year journey that starts with this issue.
I was about to say that I didn't care about what the story was because I saw that one person was doing all of it, which is immediately they get my respect.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
If you can manage to do all the artwork, all the penciling, all the color, all the writing, everything by yourself, that's a task, man.
It doesn't matter if the book sucks. If you put your time into it, I will respect it. But then you told me that synopsis, and
I find these random ones, man, and it's from what I'm assuming is a pretty small publisher called Comics Express Publishing. And I love finding these little like
it looks like it's year 1. It says
hidden gems that are just under everybody's radar.
So what I want to know is what is your process for finding these? Like, where do you look and
I find them on previewsworld.com under the comic books or graphic novels section, or I find them honestly on League of Comic Geeks. If you go into their new comic book section and just scroll down for each week, it shows you everything that's coming out that's distributed from Diamond or Penguin.
Everything. It's perfect. That's how I got Doom Patrol, honestly.
In Previews World, you can go on there. They've usually got it all in there, like I said, in like the quote unquote comics and graphic novels section. And those usually have all the indie stuff normally.
Yeah, like for me, it's I mean, I do want to thank the people at Crossover Comics, because without them, I wouldn't know half of the things I know. Because I'll be at work and just get a notification like this book is coming out, and I'm like,
I was gonna say, quick side note, one of the founders of Crossover Comics is actually ComicBookStache. He is the one who came up with the idea of the Discord server. I was one of the first few people in there, but you were the one who came up with the whole idea. And now we've got like 5 podcasts coming out of that group. We've got people doing trivia shows on TikTok Live. Like those guys that whole thing has exploded.
I don't know, man. A lot of things I wouldn't know without them, because I'm sitting in my office and they just new book coming out, and I'm like, okay, let me add it to the pull list. And my work here is done. Sometimes
that's where
I feel guilty.
Dude, it's crazy, but that's where I find a lot of the indie stuff is that, and then Twitter. Twitter's a good place. Just look up indie comics, and you'll find all kinds of stuff that's coming out.
It's a great time to be alive.
I feel so alive.
All right, so I guess we're down to ComicBookStache's final March pick here. What do we got here, man?
Vanish, number 5.
Oh, Donnie.
It's Donnie Cates book. I've read the first 2 issues. This is really, really interesting stuff.
I love Donnie, man, and I've only read the first 2 issues. I have.
Oh, okay.
But Donnie Cates is one of those writers that I just have to buy it. I don't know. Like I read the first 2 and I immediately loved it. Like I want to keep reading it. That's why I'm excited for it. But even with Thor, we're in some areas, like I would say Thor, there's like 4 volumes out right now if you want to split it up in volumes. Maybe number 3 wasn't the best one, but I'll defend it. You know, I'll stick to Donnie Cates.
Now, see, I'm a little bit torn on Donnie Cates. I have mixed, I love his indie stuff. His indie stuff is outstanding. I'm not a huge fan of his Marvel stuff. Personally, I think he tries to make every Marvel character he gets a hold of into like some big cosmic entity. And I don't feel like that's necessary for a lot of the characters.
He makes every Marvel character the strongest version of the character.
Like he maxes everybody out. And so then whoever takes over after him, it's kind of a letdown because they have to nerf the heck out of him.
Yes.
And he retcons a lot of stuff pretty frequently in Marvel when he goes over there. He tends to just scrap anything that happened before his run.
I will say, I don't know if you read the Thor run that he did.
I've read some of it.
The Donald Blake arc. I mean, what a cool concept.
Basically, he does cool stuff. Like Thor is one of the characters that Donnie Cates works really well on because Thor is already a big cosmic powerhouse. Yeah. So it makes sense to put somebody who likes to do that kind of stuff on him, like Donnie Cates, who can actually make him seem like the powerhouse he actually is.
Yeah, like for people who didn't read it.
But then he turns Hulk into a spaceship. I mean,
yeah. Basically, for me, the Donald Blake thing is so interesting because Donald Blake, no one had touched that character in decades. And then what Donnie Cates does is that it's not that Donald Blake stopped existing, but he was basically they switched spots. And Donald Blake is in this happy paradise world that's fake, basically. And at some point in Thor, he's like, you know what? I need a break. I'm gonna, become Donald Blake again. Just gonna take a break. Let Donald take the reins. And Donald Blake comes out a maniac. He's been there for 40 years. Discovered that world was fake. Killed everyone in there. And just became the biggest villain.
Comes back as a psychopath. It's great.
I gotta read that. That's interesting because
his Thor run was really good.
That's really. It's fascinating how they come up with these runs and these ideas because you take something that is from the origins of the character, right? Like
that hasn't been mentioned in like 40 years.
Because it's out of fashion, you know, to have a hammer and call and like become Thor, and like it doesn't make sense anymore. It's silly, right? Like it's been, you know, whatever.
Well, especially since, you know, like even if they had been doing that up until the MCU, say, at that point it really wouldn't make sense anymore. Like, no, this is now how, you know, no.
Well, Donny Cates has this thing where he says, if they allow me to use like this sandbox, I'll use it to its fullest capacity, which I respect. I do know he said that he never wants to touch Spider-Man.
Because he'll probably retcon the crap out of it, and like Spider-Man killed Uncle Ben, and like
here's the thing,
it'll be a bad.
It's even worse than that. He said, you know, like all his characters in Marvel become just the saddest person ever.
Yeah, by the end of the run, they're just completely traumatized.
Yeah. and he did mention that like Spider-Man brings some like memories of childhood that just were like the happiest moments of his life.
So he just doesn't want to mess up with his brand of storytelling.
Donny Cates is like the M. Night Shyamalan of comic writing. So like if he was to take over Spider-Man, like all 400 or whatever issues that we're at, we're all like, he like suppressed the memory that he actually killed Uncle Ben, and that whole guy, that guy who was escaping from the wrestling match didn't exist, and you find out like it's a whole thing. And he's like, you know, he would
mystery 65 years in the making, you know,
like it would be nuts.
But the thing that JJ said was right. Like he wrote, I think some people would argue the best Venom run, you know, I don't know if in history, but in a while at least. And then, not saying that the newest Venom run is bad, but following
it's not
that
as good.
Yeah,
it's such a hard thing to do.
I mean, it would be really interesting to interview and speak to some of the writers that have followed his runs,
because that's what the mental process is. Like, okay, he just got done doing this crazy, insane thing where so and so just took over half the galaxy, and now I have to bring this character back down to reality for the start of this next run.
Well, that's why you need with Chris Claremont to come in and probably even at, I mean, his age, but like.
But if you notice, look at Venom. They didn't go for Eddie Brock. They went for his son, which I think is a smart enough decision. Like, hey, Eddie Brock is God. No one can touch it. What about his son? And it makes sense because Venom is the symbiote, not the person.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Donnie, like I've always wanted to interview Donnie, but now I kind of want to do what you said. Like I just want to interview people who have followed up Donnie.
That's an entire podcast, man. Like every week, every month, it's a conversation with a new new writer who just followed.
Had to take over for Donnie.
That's the thing about his indies. Like the indies are just great. I mean, Vanish. I don't even know how to describe Vanish. I don't know if there's a synopsis. It's like Harry Potter, but like
in space with guns.
Yeah, it's like Harry Potter in like space with guns, and 20 years after the events of Harry Potter. And that's the thing. Like, I mean, God Country is the first book that made me cry. As you remember reading the end of God Country and just
then
crying.
he's also done Crossover, which is half of where we took the name for Crossover Comics was from that book.
Crossover. It's not the first book that made me cry, but that's the saddest moment in it. I think it's issue like 13 of might be wrong. Issue something of Crossover. He's in it. Spoiler. It's not that big of a spoiler. It's in the real world.
It's like, I don't know if you've ever read Crossover or not, Michael. But it's basically what would happen if the comic book world somehow had a way to branch into the real world.
That's cool.
Characters and real people were actually able to interact, and it actually goes horribly wrong, like horribly wrong.
Of course it does.
But you know, I say
a bunch of writers
give
start
away
dying.
The whole thing. Yeah, like it goes crazy. But there's like a big political sub story going on throughout the whole book, and like it's really, really interesting.
But you
guys are making me want to get into these modern runs, man.
Dude, you really need to, man. I'm telling you.
For a crossover, it's like 2 trades. You got it.
Yeah, so far it's only 2 trades long, so it's not much to get through.
But Donnie, it's Donnie's most like vulnerable because it's him. Like, it's
Yeah, he's
actually
in
him
the
in
book.
page.
Like he put himself into the book. Like,
and I
it's
remember
kinda
reading
cool.
it and just crying. Like he talks about his life in it, and addiction and all that. And I just remember reading it, and even as someone who hasn't gone through those things, just I was in my girlfriend's bedroom, sitting on the floor, like she was like, "Are you okay? Did something happen? Did you get a text? Someone died?" And I was like, "No, it's Donny Cates."
She's like the comic book writer.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get
That's
into my
awesome.
last pick. So we're not keeping everybody here all night. I've got a book called Ridgeline. There's another random indie book that I found. Let me bring up my info here because
I gotta say, I mean, first of all, you really chose 2 covers now that really blend in with your background.
Yes,
and that was not
like-
actually intended. It just kind of happened that way.
The Superman one and this one, and so
I was
gotta say-
thinking the whole time. I was thinking they could. Okay, not to get technical, but like you can get like a black background, use screen.
Yeah.
The black becomes invisible. I was like, is that like an error?
No, that is actually the cover of the book, which was one thing that drew me straight to it. I'm like, that's a kind of a cool way to use up negative space. 'Cause you've got
100%.
snow on the cover within all the black, and then it's just white.
That is cool.
I love it. I don't know what it's about. I don't need to know what it's about.
Now the
honestly.
question I have: could you go back to the photo? Does the white, if you kind of reverse it, right? So you're looking at the black. If you look at the white, I wonder, probably not, but I wonder if is that a figure? When like there's like 2 images.
I'm betting it has to do something with that because the story for this is like really interesting because like a lot of indie books do like the horror themes or the magic stuff or like there's typical indie book genres, I feel like you could say. This one, I don't know if it really fits into anything other than what I would call like a survival genre. Jack and Janie Sparks, a father and daughter team of wilderness survival guides, are hired to lead a fractious executive team on a grueling primitive hike on a remote mountain in Montana. Little do they know their client has enemies who find the isolated retreat to be the perfect opportunity to strike. Will they be able to use their survival skills to keep everyone alive? And that's the end of the synopsis. So it's like almost like they're trying to protect this group of people from like a group of like a hit squad on this mountain range.
That's a good story.
I don't see stuff like that in comic books very often. That's why I like going into these indie stuff because you find different stories.
You know what I will say? James 007 right now, James Bond.
I've heard you talk about that a couple times.
That's how I feel about it. It's such a just guy, spy, gun, done. Nothing extra. There's no otherworldly, and it's just James Bond.
See now, my question was going to be like, if you go inside the book, does the father, he's got to look like Sylvester Stallone, right? Like, so he's
got to look like an elderly Rambo, right? That's what I'm picturing.
It's got to
in
be
my head.
Sly Stallone because if you see that,
either that or I'm picturing like a really like. Do you know who Forrest Galante is? No. He's a what's the name of it? He's a biologist, but he's out in the field. Like he finds endangered species or extinct species that people thought were gone, and he's found he found an extinct caiman out in Indonesia, or I think it was. But he's basically like that, or a Steve Irwin type guy.
Okay,
buff as heck is what I'm picturing in my head.
Okay, I see. I mean, for me, one of like what's it called? Let me look it up because I remember reading this and just laughing to myself. Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye. It's a Gerard Way book, I remember it's like this grand story with aliens and everything, and Cave Carson just looks like a guy. And I just remember being like, huh, okay, that's cool. He's just a guy with a flannel and a beard. I was like, oh.
Right, like
that.
it's so often in comic books, everybody's got a persona, everybody's got a costume, everybody's got. Once in a while, it's nice to find something that's just about some normal people dealing with stuff that they don't have any business dealing with.
I put it here. Give me beer bellies. We need them.
You think we need more comic book characters with beer bellies?
Yeah, we need comic book characters with beer bellies. Not like even a full beard. Give me some patches, you know.
You
That
need,
half grown
we
in
need more
beard.
mustaches. That's what we need.
Yes,
We
we
do.
always need.
You need more 80s Tom Selleck style mustache going on.
Yeah, my biggest joke about that is I'm trying to convince my entire family to the day I have a kid, which like I don't know when that's gonna be, but I want them all to shave everything except for their mustache.
That's great.
And they won't do it. They will never do it.
Are you serious? Even for your kid? Yeah, they have to come through for your firstborn. Come on.
That's when you could just pull the guilt cards out and start handing them out.
Yeah.
You know what? Imagine that. Imagine just, you're 20 and your dad's like, hey, look at these pictures from when you were born. And you're like,
why does everybody have the porn star mustache?
You see, I live for the joke because it's just a joke.
Yeah. Can't take life so seriously. You'll never get out alive.
Exactly.
None of us do. So what's the point?
You had to go there.
That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. You know what I mean, though. You know what I mean, though.
You know Steve-O, right?
Enjoy yourself, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve-O said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said something like, our only goal as a human species is to survive, and the only true fact is that we won't. Just enjoy it. Have fun, man. Grow out a mustache.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you can't do nothing about yours. It's your whole brand now.
Exactly. You know what? I have considered shaving, and it's just like
if you shave, you're gonna have to start digitally putting the mustache in your videos, and that's just gonna be a pain.
I will say, not because of this, but I do have fake mustaches in my room that look fake. Just in case, and one day I might mess up shaving and I'll have to do it.
Hey, you might have to replace that. I used to have just the chin strap right here, the strip going down the middle when I was younger. You know how hard that is to keep even consistently for long periods of time? It was a constant pain in my butt.
Yeah, I mean, it's for people always ask me
the soul patch. Yeah, the little soul patch there.
Oh no, I wouldn't just leave the little bit right here. I'd have the full strip down to the bottom of my chin. Oh yeah.
People always ask me if I shave the middle. No, that's just all natural.
That's just how it doesn't grow right there.
I don't need to work
I would
on
have
that.
to shave the center of mine because it grows in just.
It's just funny, man. I don't know, but yeah, don't take
now
life
we're
so seriously.
Here doing this the entire time.
Now we're sitting here messing with our faces oh, but I think that's about all we've got for everybody tonight. Seems like a good spot to end it on the mustache talk.
Full circle.
Right. Hey, we started talking about the mustache. We got to end it on the mustache.
The circle of life.
100%. So real quick, before we sign out of here, is there anything you want to plug real quick before we get out of here?
First of all, I know this is not what I was asked, but I do want to thank you guys for having me on.
100%, man.
Great. And I am a part of Nerd Initiative, so maybe I'm calling myself great as well. But
you are great.
Nerd Initiative is great. I want to plug Crossover Comics. Look it up on TikTok. Want to plug, my TikTok, of course. It's
right there, showing on the screen for everybody.
ComicBookStache, and stash as in mustache, not as in things you say. And my podcast, Color Break. Me and Cody collects, Cody with a K. We decided to start this podcast that we don't take seriously, but we do. We're just chatting. That's the whole concept of it. We're not gonna. I mean, we'll read a book, but we won't do the most research. It's just two friends talking. So if it's based on jazz, because I drive listening to jazz, and I don't need to put my mind into it. I don't need to pay attention to the jazz. So if you want to drive and just listen to two people talk about nothing and not really pay that much attention, Color Break. There you go.
And everybody make sure you go follow Michael on Twitter at The Real Rothman.
As opposed to the fake Rothman, you know.
As opposed to the fake Rothman.
We don't like him.
Believe any of those imitators. We got the real deal here. And then you can find me at JJ's Comic Stuff pretty much everywhere on social media. If I'm not named that somewhere, please let me know and I will change it to that. So yeah, make sure you guys come and check us out. All three of us are going to be at C2E2 this year, so that's going to be fun, including a whole bunch of other members of Nerd Initiative. More stuff to announce about that later down the line. Yeah, I think that's everything. Make sure you guys check out nerdinitiative.com for all the latest, and we will see you guys again in 2 weeks from today. So be safe, be kind, and take it easy, guys.